Let me ask you a question today. Do you think a Roth IRA, or the Canadian version called a TFSA, is a superhero or a villain? Well, stay tuned because the answer today may just surprise you. Frank Thomas here, Wealth Generation Strategies, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my most favorite tools in my retirement toolbox, and that's called my TFSA. Now, I might be disclosing why I think it's so much of a superhero right up front, but there is a dark side to it as well. So we're going to talk about both sides of these definite accounts. But let's understand what this account is all about. But before we do, please remember, I'm learning this information too, so don't consider me an expert on this topic. Use it as entertainment purposes only. Look into it and talk to a registered help in your location for all the correct information. So let's get started. Now, to begin with, let's clearly define what a Roth IRA in the US is, as well as the Canadian version called the TFSA, or the tax-free savings account. These are specially sanctioned accounts by your country's government. In the US, it's called a Roth IRA, and in Canada, we call it a TFSA, or a tax-free savings account. And I think in the UK, I believe it's also called a tax-free savings account. Now, every country has different rules and regulations. Like I said initially, be sure to understand those before you get involved with one of these types of registered accounts. Now, the whole idea is you can put post-taxed money into these accounts. So in other words, you've got your paycheck, you paid the payroll taxes on it, and that happens automatically a lot of times, and you can take money from that and put it into this account. Now, the cool thing about it is, as long as you follow your government's rules and regulations regarding this type of account, any growth and later withdrawals are not considered income. And that's very powerful. This is what makes this account a superhero. Now, your TFSA or your country's equivalent can also be a villain if you don't follow the rules associated with it. I've heard horror stories of people who've invested too much into a TFSA or tried to do day trading with it, and needless to say, the government hunts them down. They do watch these accounts. So it's not unusual for the government to impose penalties in the form of either interest or fixed amounts of penalty against activity they do not like to see within your TFSA. And you got to be very aware of this. What you don't know can and will hurt you. It really does come down to understanding what you can and cannot do with this type of account, and realize that the government does watch these accounts for any activity that it doesn't like a hawk. So why is the government so uppity about this type of account? Well, it's simple. Most countries, the government's primary source of income is created through income taxes. Have you ever noticed that when you get paid, the company who employed you, they must deduct and pay your tax burden even before you see your paycheck? That's right. Even before you get $1 in your hand, they've taken off the pennies to cover the income tax. Needless to say, if you think this is a coincidence, not a chance. It's by design. But if you follow the rules on your tax-free savings account, it's an extremely powerful wealth building tool. That's the reason why I love it so much. Not only that, I can provide you with tax saving strategies that are not available without it. Now, I will say, it's not in my show notes, but I will say that there's other ways to do this, but it's fairly complicated. It does require big fees because you got to get accountants and lawyers involved and such like that. But for the common Joe like you and me, this is it. This is what works really good. So stay tuned, as I'm going to give you a real example. Me. That's right. You're going to see what I'm looking to do. But before I do, if you're enjoying this video so far, give it a like. And if you want to learn more about wealth generation from this guy right here, make sure to subscribe, and I'll be sure to give him my very best in every single video. Let's set the stage on my personal finances. To keep things super easy, I'm going to be rounding a lot of my numbers. To start, let's just say my monthly expenses total about $6,500 per month. I'm hoping to reduce that into the future as I enter retirement, but That's where it is at the moment. So that's where we start. It's my responsibility to cover these ongoing expenses. And right now, I'm working with a company who's paying me a paycheck and it's covering all of my expenses. Now, let's see how this breaks down. For me, to cover all of my expenses, I have to make a minimum of $8,800 for where I live. Therefore, before I see that paycheck, $2,280 is taken right off the top for payroll taxes, and I receive a net amount of just over $6,250. So this is a good starting point. You do the math, you'll discover that my overall tax rate is about 26%. In other words, 26% of my gross paycheck is taken in taxes. And that's an important number to remember as we talk further down. Eventually, though, I do wish to stop working one day and truly retire. I did a bit of investigation and have planned out a 40-year budget. Yes, sir, I got a 40-year budget. Yeah, I think I'm obsessed. But needless to say, I figured out how much I need to save to allow me to pull from my long-term savings in retirement, but will continue to grow as I age. I never wanted to deplete because one of my goals is to leave a financial legacy for my children and possibly some charities I wish to sponsor. So that's really important to me. With this in mind, I'm going to keep things very simple and say that I figured out how to save a total of about $500,000 or $500,000 between my wife and my TFSA accounts before I retire. One more factor is government pensions. In Canada, we have 3 possible government financial programs for people who retire or become pensioners. First is called CPP, or the Canada Pension Plan. Now, this is a forced pension plan run by the government. Second is OAS, or Old Age Security. It's based upon how many years you've lived in Canada, with your 40 years being the maximum, and you'll obtain the maximum before any clawbacks if you've lived here for 40 years. If you live less than 40 years, that number does reduce. Finally, the third one we call the GIS, or the Guaranteed Income Supplement. This is a top-up account for pensioners who don't have a ton of extra funds to cover their retirement. And this one is based upon your current income. I don't have solid numbers yet, but if I look at retiring on my 67th birthday, which is 5 years from now, I may receive the following government supplements. For CPP, it's looking at about $1,425 a month. OAS, $836, and if I get full GIS, $1,097. So if there is no clawbacks, this could be a total of $3,380 per month. So what are these clawbacks I keep mentioning? Both OAS and GIS can be clawed back if you earn too much. Both of these supplements are designed based upon a pensioner's need. Here is where it's vitally important you talk to an expert to know what you may get based upon your financial situation. Let's say, though, for this example, that these 3 benefits will be my monthly income. GIS is not considered income and thus isn't included in these income calculations, but CPP and OAS are. Now let's see how this spins out. Upon checking the tax tables, if my only income are these 2, they will gross at $2,262 per month, and it causes a tax bill, wait for it, of $178. I'm only paying a tax rate of about 8%, not 25 or 26%. Much lower than when I was still working, eh? And this is basically because when you're earning less, your tax rate is much less. So this will leave me $2,084 per month, but towards my monthly expenses of $6,500. So we take our $6,500, take away $2,084, and we still have $4,416 remaining that needs to be covered. Now remember our trusty TFSA, or our Roth IRA. Let's say we're getting at least a 10% return on those funds, and we'd like to be able to pull out 10% yearly to cover most of the remainder of these expenses. If I've saved that $500,000 and I'm getting that 10% rate of return, I can take out $50,000 a year and I'd never deplete this fund. It would be better if I had a slightly higher interest rate to cover inflation as well, but that's another topic. Let's just say, though, that we are going to take $50,000 every year over the next 12 months, and that works out to $4,167 per month. Now, if we apply this to the remainder of our expenses, this puts us at $249 remaining, which must still be paid. We still have this little shortfall in our expenses. But wait, because withdrawals from the TFSA are not considered income, then they do not have to be reported as income. With these numbers, there's a strong likelihood that I also qualify for some, if not the full GIS or the Guaranteed Income Supplement. With a maximum of $1,097 per month, this leaves us either even Steven or in the black on a monthly basis, which is kind of nice. There's no other account like the TFSA that can do what these superhero feats for you. You can literally get your cake and eat it too. Now, if we didn't have our TFSA and we needed to pull out more funds from another registered account like an RRSP or 401k fund, and we would likely see much higher tax burden to go with it. Just like our working years, as well as we would definitely see no GIS and possibly clawbacks within OAS. All that government money we could have taken advantage of is partially gone. Plus, we are depleting our RRSPs about 25% faster because of the extra taxation on the money withdrawn. I will say that this is all speculative at the moment, but I do have another 5 years to solidify these numbers and get things rocking and rolling. But can you see the power? Can you just see how powerful it is to have an account that doesn't have to register as income? Very powerful. There are some other tax strategies that I can employ. I also contributed into our RRSPs, or registered retirement savings plans. Any money coming out of these will become taxed as part of our tax burden like income. But with our numbers, we can start drawing out money from this at when I turn 67. Then turn right around and keep our TFSAs topped up on a yearly basis, as we'll be paying a much lower rate on taxes even if we take this money out, and we probably won't affect our status when it comes to GIS as well as OAS. It's wonderful. So we have a low tax rate or a lower tax rate than our working years, and we're able to continue to top up our TFSAs as time goes on. Any gains for up and coming years will be protected now inside the TFSA and can be safely withdrawn in the future again with no income tax implications. But remember, there's rules to the TFSA and the Roth IRA that you must follow. They're not optional. These rules govern contribution limits and proper investing within the account. A good example to get your TFSA penalized is to use it as a stock day trading account. There's many stories of people who have done this, and the government doesn't like this. So be sure you don't allow your superhero to become a supervillain by not following the rules established by your local government. They're giving us a tax break here, and they are watching it like a hawk. Remember that. Otherwise, this offers a lot of options to you in retirement, and I think it's more critical for you to top up these accounts before any other retirement accounts. There's only one that I would say you would want to top up first, and that is employer contributions on your contributions. If you are working for a company and they're matching your contributions 100%, 200%, I would do that first. Take advantage of that, but then turn right around, make sure you top up your Roth IRA or your TFSA. Well, hopefully using my personal example is giving you food for thought. But did you know there's an essential skill you need to learn way before all this if you want to play this game too? Be sure to check out the video you're seeing on the screen right now to learn what this essential skill is. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today, and be sure to leave your comments and questions below. And I always love to hear your feedback. Frank Thomas here, Wealth Generation Strategies. Have a great day.